Title: Wildfire. By Orville Mills. The Colorado wilderness was beautiful in its untamed serenity, but that serenity masked a lurking danger. It was late August, and the land was parched after months without rain. The grass in the meadows had turned brittle, the once lush pines were shedding needles prematurely, and the rivers flowed with little more than a whisper. Matt Carson sat on the porch of his cabin, a cup of coffee cooling in his hand. The early evening light painted the ridges in shades of amber and rust, but his attention was fixed on the horizon. A faint haze blurred the sky in the distance. Smoke. He frowned. It was wildfire season, yes, but they hadn't had an alert. Usually, he could count on the rangers to call if something was brewing nearby. Yet, as the former fire captain scanned the horizon, unease prickled at his spine. The smoke wasn't heavy, but it was steady, a warning, whispered in the language of nature. Matt had built this cabin 5 years ago, after retiring from a grueling career fighting wildfires across the western United States. It was supposed to be a sanctuary, a safe haven for him, his wife Anna, and their 2 kids, Ellie and Sam. Yet, the forest he loved so deeply had become a powder keg, and all it took was one spark to set everything ablaze. As the wind shifted, Matt caught the faintest scent of burning pine. He set his coffee down, his heart sinking. Something was wrong. The wind carried with it a low hum, a sound Matt hadn't heard in years but recognized instantly. Fire. It wasn't close, not yet, but it was moving, and the conditions couldn't be worse. Matt stepped off the porch, walking briskly toward the ridge that overlooked the valley. From here, he had an uninterrupted view of the sprawling forest, miles upon miles of dense green broken only by winding dirt roads and the occasional rocky outcrop. His mind raced as he scanned the horizon. The smoke was rising from the southwest, near the old logging trails. It was subtle now, but Matt knew how deceptive these early signs could be. Fires didn't just grow, they fed, consuming everything in their path, gaining speed and ferocity with every gust of wind. Dad. Ellie's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Turning, he saw his 10-year-old daughter jogging toward him, her curiosity evident in the way she squinted at the distant haze. What's that? Nothing to worry about, Matt said, crouching to her level. He forced a smile. Probably just a campfire that got out of control. Rangers will take care of it. Ellie frowned, unconvinced. But why does it smell so bad? Matt hesitated. He had always tried to shield his kids from the harsher truths of the world, but Ellie was sharp. She'd inherited his stubborn streak, and she wouldn't accept a half answer. Sometimes fires happen, especially in summer, he said finally. But I promise, I'll make sure we're safe. Satisfied for the moment, Ellie nodded and ran back toward the cabin, where her younger brother Sam was playing with his toy fire truck in the dirt. Matt stayed on the ridge a moment longer, his jaw clenched. He had promised Ellie they'd be safe, but that was a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. By nightfall, the smoke was thicker. Matt sat at the kitchen table with a map spread out in front of him, tracing the fire's likely path with his finger. Anna stood at the counter, silently washing dishes, her movements slower than usual. You think it's bad? She asked finally, breaking the tense silence. Matt exhaled slowly, leaning back in his chair. I think it could be. Wind's picking up, and the terrain out here, it's a tinderbox. Anna dried her hands on a towel, her expression unreadable. Should we pack? Not yet, Matt said. But we should be ready. As if on cue, the old radio in the corner crackled to life, the static giving way to a steady voice. It was the local fire chief, issuing a warning for residents in the southern quadrant of the valley to prepare for possible evacuation. Matt's stomach tightened. The southern quadrant wasn't far. If the fire wasn't contained by morning, it could easily shift toward them. He rose from the table, grabbing his jacket. I'm going to check the ridge again. Stay inside with the kids. Anna caught his arm as he passed her. Matt, she said softly. You're not a firefighter anymore. You don't have to do this. He met her gaze, his eyes shadowed with worry. I know. But I can't just sit here. By morning, the fire had doubled in size. Matt stood on the ridge, his binoculars trained on the horizon. What had started as a faint column of smoke was now a thick, roiling wall, stretching across the valley like an angry storm cloud. He didn't need to wait for the official order. They had to leave. Back at the cabin, Anna was already packing bags, her movements quick and efficient. She had grown up in a family of ranchers, and she understood the importance of acting fast in a crisis. Ellie, Sam, grab your backpacks, she called, stuffing clothes and toiletries into a duffel bag. Where are we going? Ellie asked, clutching her stuffed bear. Matt knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. To the ranger station. It's safe there, and we'll have water and supplies. But what about the cabin? Sam asked, his voice small. Matt hesitated. How could he explain to a 6-year-old that the home they loved might not be there when they returned? Instead, he ruffled Sam's hair and said, "The cabin will be fine, buddy. Right now, we just need to stick together." The ranger station was little more than a sturdy stone building tucked into a clearing by the lake, but it was built to withstand emergencies. Matt had barely parked the car when he realized the fire was closer than he had thought. The sky was dark with smoke, and the air was stifling, heavy with the scent of burning wood. Anna helped the kids out of the car while Matt unloaded supplies, his mind racing. He had seen fires like this before, fires that didn't stop until they had consumed everything in their path. "We'll be safe here, right?" Anna asked, her voice low. Matt hesitated. "For now. But if the wind shifts," he trailed off, unwilling to finish the thought. As the day wore on, Matt's unease grew. He couldn't just sit and wait. The fire was advancing too quickly, and if they didn't act, the station would be surrounded. That evening, as the kids huddled together in sleeping bags, Matt turned to Anna. "I need to go out there," he said quietly. Anna's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" "If I can create a firebreak, I can slow it down. Buy us more time." "No," she said, her voice firm. "You can't go out there alone. It's suicide." "I've done it before," Matt said, gripping her hands. "I know what I'm doing. But if I don't try, the fire will reach us. I can't let that happen." Anna stared at him, tears brimming in her eyes. Finally, she nodded. "Just, come back to us. Please." Matt kissed her forehead, then grabbed his gear and stepped into the night. The forest at night was both eerily silent and deafening. The usual chorus of crickets and rustling leaves had been replaced by the low, ominous roar of the fire, creeping closer with every passing minute. Matt's boots crunched against the dry underbrush as he made his way toward the fire line, his chainsaw slung over one shoulder and a backpack full of tools on the other. This wasn't the first time he had fought a wildfire, but it was the first time he had done it alone and the first time his family's lives were directly at stake. His flashlight cut a narrow beam through the dense smoke, but visibility was poor. Embers floated in the air like fireflies, carried by the wind that seemed to taunt him with its unpredictability. The heat was oppressive, wrapping around him like a smothering blanket. When he reached the spot he had scouted earlier, he dropped his pack and assessed the terrain. The ground here was rocky, with a narrow ravine running downhill, a natural barrier that could slow the fire if he cleared enough of the surrounding vegetation. He fired up the chainsaw, the engine's growl cutting through the night. Time blurred as he worked, his muscles straining as he cut down brush and felled small trees. Every movement was calculated, precise. He had to be fast but thorough, creating a gap wide enough to stop the fire from leaping across. Sweat dripped into his eyes, and his lungs burned with each breath of smoke-filled air. He stopped only briefly to sip water and wipe his face before diving back into the work. Then came the sound he dreaded, a sudden, thunderous crack. He froze, his heart pounding as he looked toward the tree line. A massive pine had succumbed to the fire's heat, its trunk splitting and toppling with a deafening crash. The flames surged, licking closer to his position. "Come on," Matt muttered to himself, revving the chainsaw again. He couldn't let fear slow him down. By the time he finished the firebreak, the fire was less than 200 yards away. The heat was unbearable, and the roar of the flames was deafening. But the gap he had created held, at least for now. He watched as the fire reached the cleared area and faltered, unable to find fuel to continue its rampage. For a moment, Matt allowed himself to hope. But he knew this was only a temporary victory. The journey back to the ranger station was harrowing. The fire was unpredictable, and the wind had shifted again, sending smoke and embers in all directions. Matt moved quickly, relying on his instincts and years of training to navigate the treacherous terrain. Halfway back, he heard a new sound, a low, rumbling growl that sent a chill down his spine. It was the fire's most dangerous weapon, a crown fire. The flames had leaped into the treetops, moving faster than anything on the ground. Matt broke into a run, his legs screaming in protest. The fire was gaining on him, and the thick smoke made it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. He tripped over a fallen branch and went sprawling, the sharp pain in his knee bringing tears to his eyes. "Get up," he muttered, dragging himself to his feet. "Keep moving." As he stumbled forward, the glow of the ranger station's lights appeared in the distance, a beacon of hope in the darkness. He pushed himself harder, ignoring the burning in his lungs and the ache in his legs. When he finally reached the station, Anna was waiting outside, her face streaked with soot and tears. "Matt," she cried, running to him and throwing her arms around him. "I'm okay," he rasped, his voice hoarse from the smoke. "The firebreak, it's holding, for now." Anna helped him inside, where Ellie and Sam were huddled together under a blanket. They looked up as he entered, their faces lighting up with relief. "Dad!" Sam exclaimed, running to hug him. Matt knelt down, pulling both kids into a tight embrace. "I told you I'd come back," he said, his voice breaking. The firebreak had slowed the fire, but it wasn't enough to stop it entirely. By morning, the flames were creeping closer to the ranger station. Reinforcements had arrived, firefighters from neighboring counties and a helicopter dropping water on the blaze, but the situation remained dire. Matt joined the crew, sharing what he knew about the terrain and the fire's behavior. It felt strange to be back in the thick of things, working alongside men and women who reminded him of his younger self. They worked tirelessly, cutting additional firebreaks and setting controlled burns to redirect the flames. Matt's experience proved invaluable, but every decision carried weight. One wrong move could cost lives. Back at the station, Anna did her best to keep the kids calm. Ellie had taken on the role of big sister, comforting Sam when he got scared and distracting him with stories. But even she couldn't hide her fear completely. "Mom," she asked quietly, "do you think Dad will be okay?" Anna hesitated, brushing a strand of hair from Ellie's face. "Your dad is the strongest person I know," she said. "If anyone can stop this fire, it's him." As the sun set on the second day, the fire showed no signs of letting up. The team's efforts had slowed its advance, but the winds were relentless, pushing the flames toward the station. Matt knew they were running out of options. If the fire reached the station, there would be no escape. "We need to make a stand here," he told the fire chief. "If we can hold the line tonight, we might have a chance." The chief nodded grimly. "Let's do it." The hours that followed were some of the longest of Matt's life. He worked side by side with the crew, battling the flames with everything they had. The fire roared like a living beast, its heat searing their skin even from a distance. Finally, just before dawn, the winds shifted again, this time in their favor. The fire began to lose momentum, its advance faltering as it ran out of fuel. By the time the sun rose, the worst of the danger had passed. The fire was still burning, but it was no longer an immediate threat. The days that followed were a blur of exhaustion and relief. The fire was finally contained, thanks to the efforts of the firefighters and Matt's decisive actions. The valley was scarred, its once lush greenery reduced to ash and charred wood. But the ranger station and Matt's family had been spared. As they packed up to return to the cabin, Ellie looked out the window and asked, "Will the forest grow back?" Matt smiled, pulling her close. "It will," he said. "It'll take time, but it'll grow back. Just like we always do." Months later, the forest was beginning to show signs of life. Green shoots sprouted from the blackened ground, and birds had returned to the trees that had survived. Matt stood on the ridge overlooking the valley, his arm around Anna's shoulders. The wildfire had tested them in ways they never expected, but it had also reminded them of what truly mattered. "I think we're stronger now," Anna said softly. Matt nodded, watching Ellie and Sam chase each other through the clearing below. "Yeah," he said. "We are." The end.